we'll get you some.
Right, sorry. I think Jim's going to pull up a slide presentation. So, hello, those of you that I haven't met yet. So I just I'd like to come back on a more regular basis and kind of spend some time in open comment period, kind of updating the commission with bicycle and pedestrian and multimodal transportation, things going on in the county and in the city. And this is the first opportunity I think I'm going to take. Oh, you want me to do this? Yes. Right click. Okay, please. I'm a Mac person. This is like Greek to me. So the council decided at a 3-2 vote last night to apply for 2 community sustainability grants that are offered by Caltrans. One of them pertains to the Segunda de Secha drainage channel, flood control channel that empties out at the water's edge in North Beach, and it continues winding in that pathway there, goes adjacent to high school, underneath Pico, underneath the freeway, and goes all the way up to La Plata at Pico. Most Class 1s in Southern California, Class 1 bikeways, multimodal paths, are put on drainage flood control channels. It's a shared use, not in the water, but usually up on the banks. And the grant that's going to be submitted requests funding for a high-level feasibility study to assess all of the variables that need to be considered once this project goes further into the development phase for engineering and environmental analysis. So given, can you switch to another slide perhaps? So those are just some of the assets that this kind of facility will bring. Everyone wants to ride on a Class 1 non-motorized path because you don't have to share it with cars. All ages can use it, disabled can use it, everyone can use it. It's parallel to Pico. It automatically goes where people are now and where they will be in the future, just on the other side of the hills with 14,000 homes coming in just a few years. It's closer in time than we think. That's going to translate to 30 to 50,000 cars. That's not going to be nice for Pico. So thinking ahead, the capacity to bring people to the ocean with that pathway and connecting to the railroad there in North Beach, as well as at the pier, is a tremendous asset for our community as well as regionally. So next slide. Again, the transformative capacity is part of regional connectivity. I envision a loop that forms one leg of, then Ortega Highway forms another, connects to Camino Capistrano and the Class 1 at the San Juan Creek Channel, leads you to the Mission Viejo Metrolink station, which in turn leads you to the San Juan Capistrano station. We don't have many opportunities for east-west linkages. They're very rare because of geography concerns. So this represents a unique opportunity for us and for the region. Next slide. Again, we just talked about that. I did do some census research, and as of 2010, there are, just in those few communities along Ortega Highway and up Antonio Parkway, 270,000 people. That's a big deal. And with the ranch and planning area 8 with those 14,000 homes, that's probably 50,000 people. It's not a stretch to say. We need to prepare, and I think these kinds of projects are the kinds of projects that every city needs to be considering. So again, this is not a grant to build anything. In fact, you're not allowed to submit any environmental or engineering analysis data. This is strictly for high-level feasibility. It's done typically with these kinds of projects. The OC Loop that has been championed by Supervisor Shawn Nelson required this kind of study. And this is what will eventually be produced if we get the grant. I don't want to be presumptive, but its regional value puts us in very high standing with people who consider those things. So that's about all I have to say. The other grant that was agreed upon was to also a Sustainability Communities grant to partner with Caltrans to analyze all 12 of our freeway crossings in this town for improvements for multimodal transportation to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, because freeway crossings are the equivalent of a 10-foot block wall. They're barriers. So, thank you for the extra time. I'm sorry for going over time.
Oh, we appreciate your hard work and input on this.
All right.
So, thank you,
All right,
Brenda.
thank you.
Anyone else with oral or written communications? The next item is the consent calendar, which we have none. Did you have any, Amber, did you have anything you wanted to?
I think I'm item A on public hearing.
Oh, okay. No, we aren't there yet. Okay. The next is public hearings. The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony. To facilitate the meeting for all attendees, the public is asked to limit their individual presentations to 3 minutes. Following closure of the public hearing, the Planning Commission will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. Is anyone here tonight to speak on items 8D or 8E? Very good, because those are either going to be tabled or continued, so you won't have to wait for this. The first item of business is item A, zoning amendment 15333, SB2, emergency shelter update, and Amber Gregg is our planner.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Amber Gregg. The amendment that's before you tonight is an amendment to our emergency shelters ordinance, and the purpose of it is to consider amending certain portions of it to further encourage and facilitate emergency shelters in compliance with state law SB2. So staff's available to answer any questions you might have on this.
Any questions for Amber on this item? Okay, we will, any other presentations by the city? Okay. We will open the public comment section. Anyone have comment on this item? Any cards for this? Very good. We will close it for discussion then. Who would like to start? Wayne?
I do have one question. The ES overlay district was not in our presentation. Do you happen to have that? You can put it on the screen.
No, I do not have the map of the overlay available.
Could you describe the ES overlay?
The emergency shelter overlay includes public zoned properties as well as civic zoned properties and city-owned properties.
Okay. Include business district?
Entire districts? No.
Specific districts, specific areas in a business district?
Some city-owned properties are located within business districts, and those city-owned properties are included in that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion on this item? Anyone want to submit a waiting on Wayne here. Anyone have a motion then?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to move that we approve the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, recommending the City Council approve amending section 17.56.103 and 17.53.104 of Title 17 of the San Clemente Municipal Code relating to emergency shelters.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. The next item is item 8B, a discretionary sign permit. This actually is going to have two resolutions. We have a sign exception permit and a discretionary sign permit for the Estrella Master Sign Program. And Sean is our planner.
Before Planner Nicholas begins, I'd like to do a quick presentation. For those of you that don't know, it's Sean's 34th birthday today. And here's your birthday pop.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Unexpected. Thank you. It was crazy. I was telling Jim today, I was thinking back that when I started here in San Clemente, I was 24, and now here I am at 34.
Now he's 26.
It's been good. It's been a good run. I've enjoyed it and look forward to many, many, many years to come.
What a week.
No need to sing happy birthday. But thank you, though. So, thank you, Chair Crandall. This is the Phase 2 Master Sign Program for the Estrella Center. The discretionary sign permit this evening is for the Master Sign Program establishment, as well as for a monument sign that exceeds 6 feet in height, up to 10 feet, and a sign exception permit for 2 wall signs that will exceed 64 square feet. This is not working. There we go. So consistent with Phase 1, this is the monument sign. This is actually identical to the monument sign for the large primary monument sign approved for Phase 1. It goes up to 10 feet and is located, as you can see in the bottom right corner, there at the entrance off Maricosta. There's only one of these signs on Phase 2. There was 2 that was previously approved in Phase 1. When Phase 1 actually went through, it was identified that this would be the appropriate place for the primary monument sign for the Phase 2, and staff is supportive of that location and design. As I said, it is identical to what was approved for Phase 1. So here shows the 2 signs that do require the sign exception permit. I will tell you that these signs are consistent with the approved signs, oversized signs for the major tenants of Phase 1. It was a direction we had provided to the applicant to make sure that they had presented something that was in character with that, as well as the TJ Maxx sign. The font was to address a concern by Design Review Subcommittee to reduce the massing of that TJ Maxx sign. They've chosen a different font, so it even further reduced what the perceived mass in square footage of that sign is. So it is not the largest, and I believe actually the Ulta sign is the smallest sign, but the TJ Maxx is right in the middle in terms of the sign square footage as approved for Phase 1. This just gives you a sense of the other types of tenant signs approved, because we do have the smaller tenants on the Phase 2 portion of this development. I will tell you that the proposed square footage, or the sign calculation, is identical to what is required by our municipal code for each of these tenants, and overall the total square footage proposed for the project is consistent with the municipal code. With that, staff has reviewed all the findings, and staff is supportive of both the discretionary sign permit and the sign exception permit, and does recommend the Planning Commission approve both resolutions this evening, subject to the findings and attached conditions of approval. Staff is prepared to address any of the Planning Commissioner's questions, and the applicant is available as well.
Okay, any questions for staff?
I do.
Michael?
Sean, on the smaller tenant signs, are they about all the same vertical height? And what would that be?
The same vertical height, they could potentially change. The square footage is limited, and the terms of the lengths are limited based on the 75%. There could be some variations in terms of the heights. It's the same as what we require for our municipal code today in terms of square footages. It's 1 square foot per linear foot of frontage for each tenant. So when you see 21.5 max square feet, that means that their linear frontage is 21.5 square feet. So the length of that sign at maximum would be 75% of that 21.5 linear feet. And then whatever height they could get, if they wanted to maximize the width, would be, the maximum height. But there is no limitation associated with the maximum height. Similar to what we did with Phase 1, we've required all individual pin-mounted letters, halo illuminated, so there'll be no internally illuminated signs, and also no logos, so we will only have text out there consistent with what we've done with both of, with Phase 1 and also for the major tenants.
So when you look at those elevations, you see that rectangle, that's really non-existent. We're just going to see individual letters, right?
Yeah, you will just see individual letters. That's just a potential, that square, that box represents that 75% width.
Okay. And I'm just asking the question, do you have an idea of what we're looking at in terms of vertical height there?
I think every single one is going to be different. Like I said, to be honest with you, what you see out there today is probably pretty similar to what, well, I guess not today because they've removed most of those signs because it's all under construction right now. But what was previously out there, especially for, you can see for this tenant building, this is the Pad C where Guicho's is located, Kelly's Donuts, those uses. They're all consistent with the municipal code. You know, signs have been issued in conformance with those requirements today. So I would say very similar to what you've seen for the signs out there for the last 20, 30, 40 years, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? I'm just looking at that, my guess, looking at the doorways, figuring those are probably 3 feet. It looks like the graphic is showing a 2-foot to something less than 30-inch height.
I would be shocked if they got anything above 3. Yeah, I would say probably more in the 2-foot range would be probably a good estimate.
Does the applicant wish to say anything?
Good evening, Commissioners. I just want to thank you for considering this, and we tried to mirror the Phase 1, and we met with staff and the Design Review Board twice, and everything that they had requested from us, we provided. They asked us to reduce our signage considerably, and we did that. So I'm hoping that with their approval and looking at mirroring the next-door neighbors, that you'll approve it for us tonight. Thank you.
And I will say the applicant has been very easy to work with, and we appreciate that very much.
Thank you, and you all have been wonderful.
Okay, we will close staff presentation and open for public comment. Is anyone here to speak for this project? Seeing none, we will close the public comment and open for discussion. Anyone have any comments? If not, do we have?
I do.
Go ahead.
I understand that we're in conformance with the square footage of the signs, and that there's probably not a basis for me to go against the required findings, but I guess I want to go on record to say that I think on that particular elevation, that the elevation on the bottom is the one that's along the street, and it just seems to me that there's too many signs there. I can't, for the life of me, understand why those would be important. On the other hand, the signs on the other side are very, very important because they address the more public side of that building. And I think in the spirit of trying to reduce a lot of signage, and it's not freeway signage, but it is road signage, I would have wished that would have been a lot less. Some of the other elevations are more in that spirit, but that particular one in Costa Mera seems way overdone to me, and I just wanted to say that.
Any other comments? I would make the comment that we limited the size of the monuments, and not every tenant was allowed to have signage on the monument sign. So there were some driving up, it's Maricosta is the street I think that we're looking at from here. There would be no identification whatsoever from the traffic for Maricosta for any of these tenants. So I certainly understand signage blight, and it is a comment, but I think in this case it is somewhat warranted. So I personally could support that. Do we have a motion? We have two resolutions to present. We have PC 15056. Do we have a motion for the discretionary sign permit and master sign program? It's attachment 1.
I'd like to
Button.
Thank you. I'd like to move that
pass a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, approving discretionary sign permit 15-178 Estrella Shopping Center Master Sign Program Phase 2 for monument signs up to 10 feet tall and establishment of master sign program for a commercial center located at 400, 410, 470, 500, and 510 Camino de Estrella.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 5-0. The next one is Attachment 2, which is Resolution PC 15057.
Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, approving sign exception permit 15-275 Estrella Shopping Center Master Sign Program Phase 2 for 2 oversized signs located at 400, 410, 470, 500, and 510 Camino de Estrella.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone, again. Happy birthday. Thank you very much.
The next item is item, let's see, 8C, which is a conditional use permit, 15152, for the Stance headquarter parking. And Adam Atamian is our planner.
Mouse. Good evening, Chair Crandall. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Adam Atamian. For your consideration tonight, we have a conditional use permit regarding the Stance Incorporated headquarters located at 193 Avenida La Plata in the Rancho San Clemente Business Park. The proposal is to establish a mix of commercial uses within a industrial office building. The building is a single-tenant building, and the proposed uses are commercial, office, research and development, and what we're calling employee recreation areas. The employee recreation areas are areas solely for the benefit of the employees, and they are therefore an ancillary use, meaning they do not in and of themselves generate parking, because anybody that's going to use that area is being counted for parking at some other point in the building. Also, the applicant is proposing to add parking, which would create a surplus of parking as required by the municipal code of 3 spaces on the site. In these types of situations, there are usually a couple special conditions of approval that we add on to these types of projects. In this case, we're adding one to define what an employee is. This is to ensure that the people that use these spaces are actually associated with Stance in a working capacity. And the second one is the maintenance of the uses as approved, meaning that these spaces won't be used for something like warehouse down the line. And that concludes staff's presentation. Staff and the applicant are available for any questions.
Anyone have any comments or questions of staff? I'd just like one, go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. Adam, thank you for the nice presentation. I do have some questions for you regarding our interpretation or our definition on a few items in your report. First, can you give me a clear understanding of R&D as it applies to this project, research and development? What defines that within our code? I mean, how do we determine, how do we differentiate between a use other than what's on the plan? When we look at that use, what does it look like? If I was to visit this establishment and walk in after the project is built and up and running, what am I going to see?
Well, there's no definition for research and development per se. What we're looking for in research and development is area that is that would be used for the development of commercial products. And so these areas are typically not organized as cubicles or office space. They're generally more open area, and the occupancy that's listed for those sites is typically much lower than commercial office space.
Okay, and is there a dedicated trash enclosure for this use?
Yes, there is. There's one out in the parking lot.
Okay. I didn't notice it in the site plan. Do you have a graphic of that?
I'm not sure it's shown on here. Yeah, it's next, it's on the top left. There's at the end of the parking stalls that are located directly on top of the building.
Are you on page, are you on the
I'm on
title sheet?
the title sheet.
Missing it? Oh, here it is, right here. Okay. So there's one can for this entire use, and it's dedicated to this use, nobody else uses it?
Yes.
Okay. And hours of operation. It might be better for the applicant if you don't know.
They can address that.
Okay. Okay, two more questions for you. Did the original permit specify R&D, the original use permit for stands? Was there a specification and breakdown of parking for that specific portion of the use?
No, there was no use permit for stands originally. All of the uses that they're actually proposing are allowed by right. So they would have come in and got a business license, and we would have reviewed the amount of parking they had at that time.
So if it's by right, whether it's office, R&D, or circulation, employee rec, didn't matter, it's by right, we would just calculate the parking based on the use that's proposed?
Yes.
How it's broken down.
You know, by right, I mean that they don't necessarily need a use permit for any of the uses. However, what's really triggering the conditional use permit is the increase in the amount of office space and the decrease in the amount of warehouse space.
And then finally, I understand that Stans has an operation across the street.
They did buy that building,
Okay.
or I believe they're leasing that lot.
Okay, so maybe that, I can save that question for the applicant, but I would like to know, and you can answer it if you have this information, I would like to know what the relationship is like, you know, how the uses are combined. Is one used for, strictly for office, storage, et cetera?
Yeah, I believe that what I've heard from the applicant is that they're leasing that space actually just so they can provide more parking. Because it closes in the entire parking lot on that side. But I'll let the applicant address that further.
Thanks, Adam.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a question.
Okay, Jim?
Hi, Adam.
Commissioner?
The question is, on the zoning code, it says the parking requirements is based on gross floor area. In your chart, you excluded two areas. The first one, the ancillary employee recreation. I heard your justification. We can save a discussion later on. The second item, ancillary circulation areas. Where in the code provide us the latitude to exclude circulation areas?
It's not specified, but what is also, if we were going on gross square footage, then yes, that would be included. What we're doing is we're using there's a section of the code that allows for a recalculation of areas based on a multi-function space. And what we can do is we can look at a multi-function space as if the site is large enough that the city planner would deem that each function is large enough to have a significant generation of parking demand in that space. So based on that, we would look at ancillary uses as not generating any of their own parking. So we can either look at, say, this whole thing is office, and then we just have square footage of the building, and that would give us our ratio, or we say this is a multi-function space, and then we look at what are the actual functions and what is each one generating.
Okay, well, my current question is more about the circulation. You mentioned a multi-function. If I have a single function space and that's large enough, can I still exclude the circulation area?
You know, it's typically not done, or it's typically not looked at, and it may just simply be that we don't get requests that include that. There are times where we have a business that really is like they do one thing, but their space is so large and they have, you know, storage areas and things like that that will break it up. But ultimately, if you were saying, like, if this was all research and development, when people come with an application, they just say, we're research and development, and this is the square footage, and it's an easy calculation to make. So
Right.
we potentially could, but we haven't, just out of simple fact that I don't think anybody's ever applied to the code that way.
Well, the code, there's nowhere in the code that says we can exclude the circulation area, because anyone can come to you and make a claim that a large portion of the office space is circulation. It's a big loophole that could be exploited. How do you prevent that from happening?
Well, in this case, it's a relatively small portion of the building that is being excluded as circulation. It's basically a hallway, and it's an enclosed space, and there's, aside from a couple restrooms off of it, it's not like, it's not in the middle of a big cubicle area where people are saying, this is an area where people simply are not going to congregate, just out of the fact that it's useless for any other purpose but walking through. Whereas a lot of other hallways and access areas are really, they're close enough to workspace or, square footage that would be actually counted in a use that generates parking, that it's obvious that, people will be there throughout the course of the day and potentially congregating.
Thank you.
Jim, did you
Out
have
of curiosity, do we know the number of employees?
I don't know how many employees
That'd
they
be
have.
worth asking the applicant that question, just to kind of get an idea. But even if you did count that as R&D, you would have 3 surplus spaces, so you still have some wiggle room there. Unless you counted it office, and you'd be slightly short. But I don't really anticipate this being a problem with parking.
No, I wouldn't, and this isn't an unusual situation. I think, I don't know if you were involved in it, Adam, we reviewed a church project on La Pata, I believe it was, and we had classrooms for daycare, we had offices, and there was an auditorium, and then there was recreation space, and in the calculations, they were itemized out as different, and I don't think for the recreation space, they counted parking because it was for the students, so it didn't add to it. So this is not an unusual
We did that
calculation.
actually for 24-hour fitness has a daycare, and since it's not a daycare, the kids are not generating parking. And in fact, on that project, we did exclude some of the fire exits. They were similar, that they were just hallways where there was nothing else there. So we took that square footage out. And I believe for, the church, the last church that we looked at had a similar.
Okay, would the applicant like to make any comments, or did anybody have questions directed at the applicant, or for the applicant?
Quick last
Okay,
question
Michael?
for staff. Adam, I also noticed on the plan, there's a storage area right behind the basketball court. It's approximately 29 feet by, I don't know what that is, 8 feet or so, and it doesn't appear to be part of the calculation. I approximated that square footage, and it didn't change the parking requirement much if we did include it as warehousing storage. But I wanted some clarification on that and why. I did notice that the light storage area in the mezzanine up on the second floor was included, and I was happy to see that. but we did call it light storage. And in the plan here with that space behind the basketball court, it's noted as storage on page 2. Or
Behind the basketball court. You know, when I was there, I don't remember. Oh, you know what? That must be a wall that goes all the way up. Yeah, you know, I believe that is storage. That might just be an oversight on the plans, but with the surplus, I'm sure that we can have the applicant put that on the final set of plans.
It's in the drawings, it's just on another sheet. But on that exhibit that you were looking at there, it's not defined. It's on another sheet, but it wasn't included in the parking calculation.
Yeah, it was shaded in as part of the employee workout area. Good catch.
Thank you.
Very good. Any questions directed for the applicants themselves? Would the applicants like to make any comment, or?
I do have questions.
We do have a question from Michael.
Good evening. My name's Ian Buchan. Would you like me to answer? Do you have questions for me, or?
I do have one. Well, 2. Hours of operation?
I believe it's 8 to 5.
8 to 5, just regular business hours there. Okay.
I was actually just talking to the contact at the company, asking her a couple questions that I heard you guys talking about, so.
Okay, thank you.
Number of employees, she said there's 80 at this point. They are growing, which I believe is part of the reason why they're looking to lease for other buildings, because and for storage and for putting other employees at those places. What I understand, this is the headquarters. This is kind of where they deal with a lot of celebrities and NBA players. I've been in there and seen some NBA players in there, talking to them about their products, and they bring them in and show them their stuff. And this is kind of their place that they bring, and it's a cool environment. It's got the real nice vibe to it, and the whole outdoor sports activity sort of thing. So that's really, I think, the intended use for this. It's not really an intensive warehouse sort of use. And they've got office spaces in the front and research and development spaces in the front. And then I believe as they grow, they're looking to find other spaces for additional employees.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Question about parking agreements, in that you're in a sort of a grouping of other like uses, light industrial, warehousing. Do you have any agreements in place now within that area? No. And do you have adequate parking now? Do you feel you have adequate parking now?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. And I've
always been able to find a space when I've come to visit.
It works out? Okay,
Yeah.
that's good, because I know that area is a little congested at times. Condition number 9 in the staff report, staff has laid out some conditions of approval. Have you reviewed the conditions of approval? Specifically number 9? Okay. And within that condition, there's a discussion, or really a definition, on the term employee. I'd like to know, in your words, what regular consultants and company-sponsored individuals means, and how many do you anticipate, and what frequency?
I haven't seen the only people that I've ever seen when I've been there working out or using the skate pool are employees that are there. The other people that have come in have really been there just talking to them about products. I could look into that, honestly. I don't know exactly. I know that that's the intent of what it is. It's not intended to be a place where they have big events and have people, there's the skate area is only adequate where people skateboard. When you go up there, it's all for skateboarding. There's no area that you can stand and watch what's going on. You can maybe have 5 people up there at the most if people are skateboarding. The basketball court is a large area, but what I've seen is just some little pickup games with the employees that were there, shooting baskets, maybe 10 people, a couple teams, so.
Thank you. And I had asked staff about the sister building and the use within it. Can you clarify or add to that?
That's what I called. I just called and talked to Amy about that, and she said that they're leasing space in there for storage, and that's possibly where if they get additional employees, would expand some office use over there. That's my understanding. I hadn't known about that before this, so that was what she explained to me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions of the applicant? We will close the staff presentation, and any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will close public comment and open for discussion. Somebody like to start? Michael?
Might as well. Thank you. Okay, so I went out to the site on Monday and again today, and I went out to the site in the morning and I went out to the site at lunchtime, and I noticed quite a bit of traffic going back and forth. I found out that they had a sister building, sister use across the way. I know we're looking at this project at this location, but I did want to note that there seemed to be quite a lot of activity from back and forth, a lot of cars coming and going. Clearly parking is an issue. And the reason why I went out to the site twice is because I wanted to take a look at the parking situation. It's been a hot topic for us recently, and I did notice lots of cars. The parking is fully utilized at that location. I took a closer look at the parking requirements and the parking code. It's very straightforward, self-explanatory. But the concern I have really is the definition of the use and the uses within the building, and how the space would be utilized. If you were to calc out if you were to combine per plan, the office and R&D space, you'd have over 10,000, you'd have about 11,000 square feet, which would push the requirement for parking up above what they've got in plan now, which is 35 spaces. I think it calcs out to about 36 spaces. So this, again, I believe is a bit of I hate to call it a loophole, but it is sort of a gray area, because if an R&D space looks like the image we see up on the board, folks are working there, whether they're standing, sitting, their computer monitors, they're working. It's workspace. And it's the new office space. Not everybody is sitting in cubicles anymore. People are standing, moving around, free-flowing. So, in my opinion, it could all be office space. So, for the sake of discussion, I think and for the sake of future discussion and concern, we should be aware of these things, and we should really ask that staff define it and distill it down to exactly how the space is going to be used, so we can truly call it office or research and development, and why. So we can come up with better math on the parking. It's an issue, and I wanted to draw some light to that. The other concern I had was the hours of operation and how the employee base was going to be using the facility. It's an 8 to 5 operation. I'm comfortable with that, just like anybody else up there. They're working regular business hours. But my concern, again, comes back to parking. This is a very popular brand, especially with the young kids. They produce a product that is hot right now. It's mainstream, it's hot, and clearly the operation is thinking outside of the box. They're creating a very user-friendly, comfortable work environment. I love it. But the question is how many folks are going to be associated, with the use, with the company. How many people are going to be coming and going? We don't know. The applicant wasn't sure. I don't believe staff knows at this point. So it's an undefined and uncertain number of trips coming in and out of that already compromised property. So what can we do about it? I mean, at this point, do we have enough here to feel comfortable making a decision on the project? It's a good project, but the parking is an issue. The reasons I just explained. Thank you.
Anyone else? Michael?
Michael, I agree with you. I sort of get why we've come with these calculations, because office, research, development, warehouse, storage, we're looking at space where bodies are going to be in full-time. And the thinking, I guess, behind this ratio of not counting the employee rec and circulation areas is that actually isn't workspace. That's circulation or other space where people aren't really working full-time. However, what's to prevent those spaces to morph into office space over time? Nothing. We have no control over that. So easily, the number of employees could increase dramatically without an increase in parking. And Michael said, well, I don't know what to do with that. I would suggest that we limit the occupancy.
Jen?
Yes, our zoning code regarding the parking requirement in office space is a little bit outdated. It says one parking space per 300 square feet. And that's based on the assumption of a traditional office layout or cubicle layout. Today's office has a new trend. We call them open plan. You can see those examples in companies such as Google or such as Cisco. The office space is not a space for work not work only anymore. It's a space also for recreation. People go there. Google even offer lunch to their employees. So the employees stay there all the time. They have very small, dedicated space for their work, but they move around, they gather, they discuss. It's a new trend. It offers more collaboration and a connection between the employees. But another factor of that open plan office space is that it saves lots of office space for these companies. Cisco had a case study. The case study is called Office Design Case Study, how Cisco designed the collaborative, connected workspace environment. And the finding is they can accommodate 140 people in an area that used to accommodate 88 people in a cubicle or private office environment. What it says is they can save lots of real estate space for this office space. So one can safely assume that with a new layout, they can put more people in that same office space. I feel very uncomfortable to exclude this employee-only recreation area and circulation area. I think they stretch too much from our code regulation.
Anyone else? Okay. What might happen or what spaces might be used for, you could apply to absolutely every project we do. And I think that employee recreation area, and if you look at the Cisco project, they've got huge recreation areas for their employees, not just in the office space. Yes, they condense down in the working area, but they also have huge areas for recreation and amenities for employees, and that's basically what is occurring here. We're stuck with the code saying how many parking spaces per square foot for the activities. Stance is a very creative company, and they're doing design here, they're doing marketing, they're doing no fabrication, no shipping. They really don't have, I don't believe, any warehousing in this existing building. They may be doing it somewhere else. So I don't see their employee base being high. Limiting the number of employees in the space, I think we're doing that by designating the areas so it could be backed out from the square footage. We're saying one I guess it's one parking space per 300 square feet. We can also figure that for occupancy and back out the actual occupancy and work that out. But if the building's going to be used the way it is, and this is the head office, it's their showplace, it's where the people who started the company are working, the CEOs and all, they're not going to want to get this thing so occupied. This is more of a flash and image for them. And I think another building, they may not be as insistent on keeping as nice as this. I think it is a traditional way of calcing uses. Could they turn these into office? We've got conditions of approval that say no, they can't. I think it was 8, 9, and 10, or 9, 10, and 11 under the conditions of approval. 9 through 12, actually. That if they do get more people in there, there's going to be special events. And being a condition of approval, if there is a parking problem, we can review it and change it, correct, Adam?
Let me verify that. I know we've got a standard, but we've got a condition of approval.
I'm looking at 11 here, item 11.
No, I didn't include that, that condition of approval that says something to the effect of, should there be issues with parking, that the city planner or community development director will have the authority to review.
I would certainly be more comfortable personally with that in there.
Yeah, that is typically applied to. That's typically applied to projects that, where there's either hours of operation, pickup and drop-off of schools. There's something to actually regulate. I didn't include it in this one, and I was trying to cover contingencies with the special conditions of approval that we do have, because it would be a difficult thing to revise the project. Revising the project would basically mean telling somebody they can't use a certain portion of the building or having them
Well, I think it
build
would
something
be,
differently, rather than saying you can drop off, half an hour earlier, or, something to that effect.
I guess where I'm coming on for this one is, if in fact they do have another building in there with X number of employees, that could very possibly add additional people who would be using the recreation areas in that building. And coming up now. So if parking does become a problem, and they put their parking over there and people walk across, that's fine, that doesn't hurt anything. But it's when they bring their cars to this building to use it would be an issue. And it seems that if in fact there did become a parking problem, it would have to be studied why. Where are these additional cars coming from that weren't anticipated?
Well, if we can identify where the cars are coming from and identify that they're employees that work at stands at another location typically, then they'd actually be in violation of condition 9, because it specifies that they're employees that are associated with Stance in a working capacity at 193 Avenida La Plata.
Okay. Okay.
And I did that because Stance actually has, I believe, 4 properties in South Orange County. And I don't know what the other facilities have, and so to, protect from the case where this becomes the employee gym for South Orange County.
Okay, very good. Wayne?
I think that some of the commissioners here have brought up some very valid points with regard to determining parking spaces, the required parking spaces on square feet. Because that's the, traditional method but we're in a situation now where I think we really need to put emphasis and really consider the new way in which offices are used. And if they have 80 employees, or whatever they have at this point, and they have 35 parking spaces, is everyone going to carpool? Jim, have we ever considered the new dynamics of the office space here as far as calculating parking spaces, not on per square feet, but on the new dynamic here of how people are operating offices?
No, we haven't. I think that this is kind of something that we should look into, the whole dynamic of this new kind of office space. I mean, clearly, it's a kind of a business that the city would want to encourage in the community, and I think a lot of people, understand that this is where businesses are headed, and that there's probably information out there that we could look at to determine, what kind of standard is being used across the country for these kinds of new office spaces. It might be good information for the Planning Commission to know before you make a decision on this. In regard to the expansion, I think that we do have some ability to condition this. I think someone mentioned that there's 80 employees at the facility now. We could put a condition that says that subject to the effect that the city will review this in 6 months and include some requirement for some parking analysis to see how it's working out. And if there's a parking shortage, allow the city to make adjustments in either the requirement of the number of employees on site, innovative carpool requirements, or some other way to reduce the parking demand so it doesn't impact the neighboring properties. And so there's a number of things we could do. If the commission decides they're not comfortable now with the information that you have, by all means, continue the item. We can give you some more research. I think that regardless, we do need to do this kind of a research for this kind of facility. We're in the process of updating all of our specific plans, and probably a good time to take a look at that because it's a new animal. It didn't exist back when the specific plans were first developed.
Okay, that's good input. I was just thinking also, we, within the last year or two, we reviewed, and I think, Wayne, you might remember it, a professional skateboarder who took over a building, was putting in his own ramps, went for very small parking because it was strictly his practice area. And, could he put a bunch of people in there? Yes. Could they throw a bunch of offices in there? Yes. But you had to, it was stated it was strictly for his, and I haven't heard that there's been any problems with that. So it's certainly been done. And I don't remember, I think we just put conditions of approval that they couldn't use any additional people in there, they couldn't hold special events, and it was strictly a private deal. And so I'm kind of comfortable with what Jim Petchus indicated, that based on existing employees and what's being presented to us today, it looks like it would work. But in 6 months, if we have the ability to review it and find out that they've doubled their employees and it's not working, we have the ability to then restrict it back to the employee base that they currently have. Yeah, Jim.
Just wanted to add some information. Adams, in his surveys of the parking situation out there, he's found that typically at peak times that there's parking spaces open. So like 5 to 7 spaces at a time open even during the peak period, and they've been operating this use for about a year now. So it's not anything new. And the reason why we went toward the recommendation that we did was we didn't see the parking situation operating the way it is to be a problem. But I think that there's some valid concerns about the expansion where it could be a problem later on. So I just wanted you to know that currently under the existing situation, we haven't observed a parking issue with the 35 spaces. accommodating the 80 employees. And in order to address the expansion, I think you have the ability through the conditions of approval to limit that in some manner, either through a 6-month check or even just a condition that we applied to like some of those other uses where the city has the ability to come in if there does become a problem to require some mitigation for it.
Okay. Michael?
Well, I think we're kind of homing in on a concern here that's very realistic. If you just do the math here, you know, you've got 9,400 square feet that could go towards other use over time. And if it went for office, that'd be another 30 parking spaces. If it went for research and development, that'd be another 20 parking spaces. So even if you use these numbers and these ratios, the potential here for this being lopsided is great. And I don't see any control other than to put some conditions on it. I like that idea, Jim. I think we ought to. I'm not quite sure what they ought to be, but, you know, they said they're a growing business, and growing businesses usually have more people and more activity. And with that in mind, one can only assume that there could be more people here. And therefore, I think we've got a very awkward situation where it doesn't feel good. I don't think it feels good to any of us. And I would suggest that maybe we table it and have the city staff take a look at some conditions that we might be able to live with. We're going to be facing these kinds of problems over and over again, and these are low ratios. Even with these ratios in place, and even as with the status quo, we've got 80 people working in 35 parking spaces, and I'll bet you there's hardly anybody that carpools there. So I think there is a certain concern here that's very realistic, and I think we ought to address it. I don't think we should just mildly go by and let this happen.
Jim?
Yes, in the zoning code, there is some provision about the sports court. For example, tennis/racquetball court will require 3 spaces plus incidental uses. It's reasonable to assume that a tennis court will be used by 2 to 4 people, depending on if they play singles or doubles. So 3 is in the middle. A basketball, you can call it 10 people using it if 2 teams are playing there. So that gives us some bench point to consider the number of parking that should be required by the basketball court. Before I see a parking survey or parking analysis, there are some means of carpool to reduce the parking demand here. I cannot support this as it is today.
Okay, I'll make a comment on that before I give it to Michael here. That would be typical of a building that was bringing people in from outside the building to use those facilities. These are people that are already at the building, so it's not increasing the use or demand for parking, since this is slated specifically for employees within that facility. So I'm not sure we can use those typical numbers at a basketball court. Yes, it'll take 10 people, but that would take 10 then out of the employee pool that aren't using parking spaces. So I'm not worried about that particular calc. It's just if parking works now and they're not bringing anybody in from the outside, the parking would continue to work. Can we keep them from hiring new people? That's pretty hard to enforce. The only thing we can do is monitor the parking, and if it becomes an issue, then if we have a condition that says, you know, this is considered for employee use, that's not what you're doing, you're in violation of your conditional use permit, and they're going to have to correct that situation. So with the proper condition of approval, I could certainly support it, but I don't think leaving it open-ended, I'm quite comfortable with supporting it. But if Adam has a recommendation for a condition of approval that would limit, or give us the opportunity to come back and limit the employees back to the base point where we know it's working, which is today, and doing these calcs, that would probably give me the comfort level that I could support it. Michael?
Okay, so then, Commissioners Wu and Crandall, back to your conversation about the employee usage. Again, condition number 9 gets into that sort of gray area of what an employee is for this business. There's a discussion on independent contractors, regular consultants, and the company's sponsored individuals. To me, I have great discomfort with that, only because that's an uncertain, undefined number of folks. We have 80 people working at this establishment per the applicant. We have 35 parking spots. How is that math working for anybody? I don't understand. Unless there's some sort of something that we're missing here. If there are maybe there's carpooling happening, or there's shifts, but it's my understanding that the hours of operation are 8 to 5 for 80 employees. Where's the parking? And I would like to invite the applicant up in a moment to address that if he feels comfortable with that. So at the end of the day, we have 35 stalls, and we don't have enough stalls for the employees of this use. No matter how we slice and dice the use, 25,000 square feet as pure office space at 300, 1 per 300, that's 83 stalls. Forget that, it's never going to happen, because there are other uses there that have dedicated permitted parking for their usage. There's just no stalls. If it was just, industrial or warehouse, it's 2,000, 1 per 2,000. That puts us at 12. We're in good shape there, but that's not what's happening here. On plan, it shows, storage, warehouse, R&D, but to the multiple points that have been made here, this is the new office environment, and I think it's exciting. I'm excited about the use. I think it's innovative, and it's clearly where the workplace is going. And studies have shown that it creates a more vibrant environment, more productive. Folks tend to stay longer, tend to stay at the job longer, et cetera. So there are many benefits to it. But on paper, the math just is not working. So my suggestion is, because we cannot create more parking, dedicated parking, unless we go back, have the applicant go back and revisit this with some of the adjacent property owners and discuss a reciprocal parking agreement, come up with a plan that makes sense. They've got a sister property across the street. There's been no discussion about that here. What parking is there? Can we give and take? Can we come up with a carpooling situation, shifts, something to make it work? But I think it'd be unfair to allow this to happen as it stands now for the other folks that work in that area. It just wouldn't be right. That's my position on it, and I couldn't support it as is.
Any other comments?
Just one more. I really feel, Jim, that we really need to have an analysis of the new office dynamic here. I'm not comfortable at all approving this evening, and I think we just need to have some study done to do it, because as you said, Michael, the math does not work. 80 employees, 35 spaces, it doesn't work. The calculations and the way in which we have been calculating space is just not going to work for this type of new office dynamic.
Okay. I'd like to ask the applicant a question. If you'd come up to the mic. We're in a position, I see at this point, that if we called a vote for approval, it probably would not stand up. And if we continue, would the applicant be acceptable to that, to do additional studies on the parking and work with planning staff to come to a better agreement?
Yes, yeah. I wanted to comment on the number of employees, I believe, is company-wide, and they do have other buildings, and that's something I would like, I mean, I think it should be clarified that it's part of further analysis then.
Okay, it would appear, Jim, that if we continue, would we do a date uncertain, or?
I recommend tabling it because I'm not
Table it.
really certain how long it's going to take us to do the
Okay.
further research. But I think we do. I think that we made some good points here with the Planning Commission for us to look into, so we can follow up on that direction and then get back to you with some possible options in order to allow this use to occur.
Very good. Well, for all the planning commissioners, I think that was all good input, and do we have a motion to table this until additional information is available?
Well, I'd like to make the motion to table until we can do the research necessary on the new dynamic office, the number of employees, and further study with regard to the parking capacity here.
Very good.
I'll second that.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Passes 5-0. Thank you. The next item is item 8D, a zoning amendment, sign exception permit amendment. This is Sean, who is not here. The recommendation by staff is that this be continued to the Planning Commission meeting of November 4th, 2015. Does public have any comment on this item? I'll close public comment. Any discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the item zoning amendment ZA 15-225, sign exception permit amendments, be continued to the public hearing to the Planning Commission meeting of November 4th, 2015.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item is item 8E. The subject is 914.5 Avenida Presidio and 721 Avenida Colombo, tentative parcel map 2011-110, Malki Subdivision. Staff has the recommendation that this item be tabled, and that is due to additional staff work required for environmental processing. We'll open for public comment. Any comment? No? Close public comment. Any discussion? Do we have a motion?
I make a move. Move the planning commission to table this matter. Future date due to.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes 5-0. And our next order is new business. Anybody have new business? I have one item. Jim, could you have someone look into the signage at 390 Maricosta? It's right across from the Estrella Shopping Center, and if you turn the corner from Estrella onto that, it is a billboard. I mean, there must be, I think it's way oversigned. And if they could look like that and have code enforcement look at that, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because also they have feather banner signs in that area. Those need code enforcement.
center?
Yeah.
So it's across, yeah.
It's across the street. And code enforcement has been advised of the feathers, signs, banners before, but they seem to keep popping up in that area there. And those are not permitted under our sign code whatsoever.
And we've been so careful to, on the Estrella Shopping Center, I think it's only fair that we make the surrounding area comply where possible.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, any other new business? Any old business? Okay, reports from commissioners and/or staff?
I don't have a report, but I will not be here at the next planning commission meeting.
Okay.
I'd like to be because of the pole signs.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn to the next planning commission.
October 30th.
Oh, October the,
Pass it down to flip it over. There you go.
adjourn to the tour of the outlets at San Clemente, outlets of San Clemente, 1215 on October the 30th, commencing at the Community Development Department located at 910 Calle Negocio, San Clemente, California.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None, passes 5-0.
And I will be able to come to that.